This week, without a single press conference, without a single headline that most people actually saw, the United States government quietly took control of something it has never controlled before. Who gets to use the most powerful artificial intelligence on Earth? For years, that decision belonged entirely to private companies. They decided which businesses, which governments, which partners got access to their best technology. This week, that changed. The White House is now the one deciding who gets in. And in the exact same week, on the other side of the planet, a Chinese startup you've probably never heard of released a model that beat some of America's best AI systems on real tests, and then gave it away for free to anyone on Earth who wanted to download it. One country just built a wall. The other one just handed out the blueprints. And almost nobody noticed both things happened in the same 7 days. You already know AI has been the biggest story in the stock market for the last couple of years. Companies spending hundreds of billions of dollars, chip stocks doubling and tripling, everyone arguing about whether it's a bubble. You've heard all of that. What you probably haven't heard is what happened behind closed doors this week, because it didn't come with flashy earnings calls or dramatic stock charts. It came from two quiet, separate announcements that, when you put them next to each other, tell you something the market hasn't fully priced in yet. Let's start with what actually happened in Washington, because the details matter here. Back in June, the Trump administration signed an executive order asking AI companies to voluntarily give the federal government early access to their most advanced models, up to 30 days before those models were released more broadly. At the time, it was framed as a security check. Look under the hood, make sure nothing dangerous is loose in the world, then let the company release it. That's the official story. And there's nothing unreasonable about wanting to check whether a new AI system could be misused before millions of people start using it. To understand why this matters so much right now, you have to understand just how fast these AI companies have grown in a very short window of time. A handful of these companies didn't even exist in a meaningful commercial sense 5 years ago. Today, some of them are valued in the hundreds of billions of dollars, and the technology they're building is advancing so quickly that even the people running these companies have publicly admitted they're not entirely sure what the next version of their own product will be capable of. That's an unusual situation for any government to be watching from the sidelines. Historically, when a new technology gets that powerful, that fast, with that much uncertainty attached to it, governments eventually step in. It happened with nuclear technology in the last century. It happened with the internet, eventually, in slower and messier ways. The question was never really whether governments would get more involved in AI. The question was when and how much control they'd end up wanting once they did. But according to reporting from CNBC this past week, citing people familiar with the matter, that voluntary check has quietly turned into something bigger. The administration isn't just reviewing these models anymore. It's now deciding which specific companies and organizations are allowed to access the most powerful ones at all. One major AI lab was reportedly asked by the administration to limit a new model's release to what's being called trusted partners only. A new government program launched this same week with the name Gold Eagle is being positioned as a way for the government to work directly with AI companies on security. Now, to be fair, and this matters, a White House official pushed back on this characterization, telling CNBC the administration does not provide approvals for private AI releases. That denial is on the record too, and you should know it exists. But here's what isn't in dispute. The companies that used to make these access decisions entirely on their own are now operating inside a system where the government has real, functional influence over who gets to use their most capable technology. And that influence didn't exist a year ago. Sit with that for a second, because it's a bigger shift than it sounds like. For the entire history of the AI boom so far, the story has always been about which private company builds the smartest model. Now there's a second layer sitting on top of that story, which is which model the government decides you're allowed to have. So why would the government want that kind of control in the first place? Here's the honest, non-conspiratorial answer. The most advanced AI systems are increasingly capable of things that go far beyond writing emails or generating pictures. They can assist with cybersecurity. They can be used defensively or offensively in digital conflicts. And there are real documented concerns about advanced models being used to help design weapons or run large-scale hacking operations. If you're the government and a handful of private companies are sitting on technology that powerful, At some point, you start asking whether it's smart to let quarterly earnings targets be the only thing deciding who gets access to it. That's a legitimate question. The tension is that legitimate security concerns and control over a trillion-dollar industry can both be true at the exact same time. And it's genuinely hard to tell from the outside where one ends and the other begins. Now, here's where this gets interesting, because while all of that was unfolding in Washington, something else was happening on the other side of the world that makes the timing almost impossible to ignore. On July 16th, a Chinese AI company called Moonshot AI released a model called Kimi K3. If you haven't heard of Moonshot AI, you're not alone. Most people outside the AI industry hadn't either, until this week. Here's what makes this release genuinely remarkable. And I want to walk you through the actual numbers, because they're what should really catch your attention. Kimi K3 has 2.8 trillion parameters, which for context makes it the largest open-weight AI model ever released by anyone, anywhere. Open-weight means something specific and important here. It means the actual underlying files that make the model work are published publicly, for free, for anyone to download and run on their own computers. Not rented through an app. Not paid for by the token, downloaded, owned, and run independently, forever, by whoever wants it. And it isn't just big. Independent evaluators who test AI models for a living, groups with no stake in whether America or China wins this race, ran Kimi K3 through their benchmarks. On one measurement of front-end coding ability, tested through blind evaluation, where developers don't know which model they're using, Kimi K3 ranked first in the world, ahead of one of Anthropic's newest and most capable models. On a broader industry benchmark that tracks real-world knowledge work across dozens of occupations, Kimi K3 placed third overall in the entire world, trailing only the very top two American systems and beating every other model on the planet, including other well-known American ones. Here's a way to think about the scale of what just happened, because trillion parameter numbers don't mean much on their own. A year and a half ago, the general assumption across the entire AI industry held by American executives, American investors, and American government officials alike was that Chinese AI labs were meaningfully behind, likely by a year or more, and that the gap was probably going to widen, not shrink, because of restrictions on the advanced computer chips China can legally buy from American companies. Those chip restrictions are real, and they're still in place. And yet here we are, watching a Chinese startup most people had never heard of a week ago put out a model that independent testers, with nothing to gain from flattering either side, are ranking among the best in the world. If the plan was to keep China several years behind through export controls alone, this week is hard evidence that plan isn't working the way it was designed to. Now, I want to be fair and precise here, because exaggerating this wouldn't do you any favors. Kimi K3 does not beat the single best American AI models on every measure. The top closed systems from the leading US labs still hold the overall crown. What Kimi K3 did is close a gap that most people in the industry assumed would take China years longer to close. And it did it while costing a fraction of the price to actually use. Independent pricing data shows Kimi K3 running at roughly half the cost of one of its closest American competitors for comparable tasks. And it's free to download entirely if you have the computing power to run it yourself. There's also a detail in how this model works that's worth understanding, because it explains part of why it's so much cheaper to run. Even though Kimi K3 technically contains 2.8 trillion parameters, it only actually activates a small fraction of them, somewhere around 2%, for any single task you give it. Think of it like a massive company with thousands of employees, but for any specific project, only the small team with the exact right expertise actually gets pulled in to do the work, instead of the entire company showing up every time. That efficiency is a big part of why it can be offered so cheaply while still performing at a genuinely competitive level. Think about what that actually means side by side. In America this week, access to the most powerful AI is being funneled through a smaller, more controlled list of approved partners. In China this same week, one of the most powerful AI models ever built was handed to the entire planet for free. No application process, no approval list, no waiting. One system is tightening. One system is flooding the market. and they happened in the same 7 days, which is either a wild coincidence or it's the clearest signal yet of two completely different strategies for winning the same race. Here's something else that happened the same day Kimi K3 launched that puts the timing in even sharper focus. The release landed on the opening day of the World AI Conference in Shanghai, and China's president used that same stage to announce the creation of what's being called a World AI Cooperation Organization. The pitch, in plain terms, is that China wants to position itself as the country inviting the rest of the world to build AI together, openly, rather than the country hoarding it behind closed doors. Whether or not you think that framing is genuine or just smart positioning, the strategic message lands exactly the same either way. While one country was tightening its guest list, the other was publicly announcing it was opening the doors to everyone. You don't have to guess which version most of the world outside America finds more appealing on the surface. Think about who exactly benefits from a free, downloadable, world-class AI model showing up right when access to American systems is getting harder to obtain. Universities running research on tight academic budgets. Small startups that will never make it onto a curated list of trusted partners. Entire countries that, for political or economic reasons, don't want their national AI strategy depending on approval from Washington. Every single one of those groups just got a very good, very practical reason to start building with a Chinese open model instead of waiting in line for an American one. If this pattern sounds familiar, that's because it should. Back in January of last year, a different Chinese AI company called DeepSeek released a model that shocked the American tech industry so badly it wiped out roughly $1 trillion of stock market value in American chip and AI companies in a single trading day. Investors panicked because the core assumption underneath years of massive American AI spending, that only companies with essentially unlimited money and the most advanced chips could build genuinely competitive AI, suddenly looked shakier. The market eventually calmed down, American companies kept building, and the story mostly faded from daily headlines. But here's the uncomfortable pattern if you zoom out. That wasn't a one-time scare. It's become closer to a recurring event. Since that first shock, multiple additional Chinese labs have released models that close the gap further, each one arriving faster than the one before it, each one a little cheaper, each one a little more capable relative to its American counterparts. Kimi K3 isn't the story on its own. It's the latest entry in a pattern that keeps repeating. And patterns that repeat are exactly the kind of thing markets eventually have to take seriously, even if they shrug off any single instance of it. If you own shares in any AI-related company, directly or through a fund in your retirement account, the entire value of that investment rests on an assumption. The assumption is that the world will keep paying premium prices for American AI because there's no real alternative worth switching to. That assumption is the foundation under trillions of dollars in stock market value right now. Every time a capable free alternative closes the gap even a little, that foundation gets a little less solid, whether the headlines about it are loud or quiet. And here's the part that I think deserves more attention than it's gotten. A chip industry analyst at Bank of America put out a note this week responding directly to the Kimi K3 release. The concern wasn't really about this one model beating this one benchmark. The concern was about the pattern. This is now the third major Chinese AI release in recent months to seriously close the gap with the top American systems, each one arriving faster than the last, each one cheaper than the last, each one given away more freely than the last. If you're an investor looking at a chip company or an AI company trading at a price that assumes years of uncontested American dominance, that pattern is exactly the kind of thing that should make you ask harder questions about how long that dominance actually lasts. You can already see the ripple effects if you know where to look. Just 1 month before Kimi K3 launched, a different Chinese lab called Zhipu AI released a model that scored close to the top American systems on coding tasks at 1/5 of the price. And it broke something that had quietly become an assumption in the industry, that Chinese AI development ran at least 6 months behind American development no matter what. That assumption held for years. It stopped holding this summer. And there's more coming right behind it. A Hong Kong-listed company called Minimax is reportedly building a model of similar scale, expected to arrive within the next few months, alongside a separate multimodal system. Moonshot's crosstown rival DeepSeek is also expected to release an update of its own soon. None of this is happening in isolation. It's happening in waves, each one closer together than the last. There's also a strange irony sitting underneath all of this that I don't think enough people are talking about. The tighter the access controls get in America, the more attractive an open, free, downloadable alternative becomes to everyone outside the small list of approved partners. Universities doing independent research, startups that can't get on a trusted partner list, entire countries that don't want to depend on Washington's approval for basic access to modern AI tools. Every one of those groups just got handed a very good reason this week to start building on Chinese open models instead of waiting in line for American ones. Restricting access to something doesn't make the demand for it disappear. It just tells you exactly where that demand is going to go next. To be clear, none of this means American AI companies are suddenly in trouble, or that this is some kind of overnight collapse story. The best closed models in the world are still American, for now. And that's not a small advantage. Enterprise customers who need guaranteed reliability, accountability, and support are not simply going to switch to a free download overnight, especially for anything mission critical. But the gap that used to feel unbridgeable, the idea that America was so far ahead that competition wasn't really a serious threat, that gap just got smaller in a single week, in full public view, with the numbers to prove it. There's a bigger question sitting underneath all of this that goes beyond any single company's stock price, and it's worth asking directly. What actually wins a technology race like this one? Is it having the single smartest model in the world, sitting behind a login screen, available only to whoever gets approved for access? Or is it having your technology quietly become the default choice for millions of developers, businesses, and governments around the world, simply because it's good enough, it's cheap, and nobody has to ask anyone for permission to use it? Those are two fundamentally different definitions of winning. And right now, one country is optimizing for the first definition, while the other is optimizing for the second. History with other technologies doesn't give you a clean answer here. Sometimes the most restricted, most secure option wins because trust and reliability matter more than raw availability. Sometimes the option that spreads the fastest and becomes embedded everywhere wins simply because it becomes too widely used to displace, even by something technically better. Nobody watching this unfold right now, including the people inside these companies and this administration, can tell you with certainty which pattern this race is going to follow. So here's where that leaves things. Washington is betting that controlling who gets access to the best American AI keeps the country safer and keeps America ahead. Beijing is betting that giving its best AI away for free builds so much global reach so quickly that being slightly behind on the single smartest model stops mattering. Both bets are being placed right now in real time with real money attached. And we are genuinely early enough in this that nobody, including the people making these decisions, actually knows for certain which bet wins. But you know something this week that you didn't know last week? You know that the story of this race isn't just about who builds the smartest model anymore. It's about who controls the door and who's giving out free keys to walk through a different one entirely. Keep watching which strategy the rest of the world actually chooses to build on, because that choice, made by thousands of companies and countries over the next few years, one decision at a time, is going to matter a lot more than any single benchmark score ever will. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you back here very soon.